Forspoken is a game about self-discovery and exploration. It's about finding out who you are as a person, that you matter in a world that has treated you so poorly. Frey Holland has had a rough life. As an orphan, she's had no one to rely on but herself. But when she's suddenly teleported to a whole other world called Athia, Frey is suddenly needed on by the last surviving humans in the city of Sepal. Cherished by the people for who she is and the magic she is suddenly capable of, but Frey is too self-reliant and can't accept this, leading her onto a journey of change, for both herself and the land of Athia. And just like the people of Sepal needing Frey to save the day, sometimes we all need a hero to be there when times get rough, which is why today's sponsor Morgan & Morgan is perfect for this video. Injured and don't know where to start? With Morgan & Morgan, it's so easy. As America's largest injury law firm, they have over 800 attorneys operating in 49 states. And since they aren't a traditional law firm, with Morgan & Morgan, you can submit a claim without ever having to leave the couch. Everything you need to do can be done right from your phone. It's never been easier to do. In 8 clicks or less, you can submit a claim to Morgan & Morgan. This means no more visits to the law office with timely consultations and paperwork. You can submit case details, sign contracts, upload documents, and medical records all from your cell phone with ease. You can even text your attorney and legal team throughout your case. Morgan & Morgan has recovered over $15 billion for their clients, and they can help you too. If you're ever injured in an accident, you can check out Morgan & Morgan. You can submit a claim in 8 clicks or less without having to leave your couch. For more information, check out the link in the pinned comment below or dial pound law. That's pound 529 from your cell phone. Thank you for being today's sponsor, Morgan & Morgan. Let's get back to the video. Ever since Forspoken was announced as Project Athia in 2020, I had a ton of intrigue for the game. The idea of plucking a regular person like you or myself from our world and transporting them to this unknown fantasy medieval-like world full of magic and otherworldly creatures is something we would typically see in television or film rather than in video games. I like being able to relate more to the protagonist because Frey is from our world, navigating this fantasy world from the perspective we would typically have playing a game like Final Fantasy or Dragon's Age. Forspoken is a fish out of water kind of scenario. As said earlier, Frey has had a rough life. Orphan, multiple instances with the law and gangs, but all to survive. She's a bit stubborn and can't see her potential, but we also see Frey's caring side with her cat Homer, the only family she has ever had and her reason for surviving. It's rather sweet and heartwarming to see how much she cares for her cat, and it's because of all of this that she wants to get the hell out of New York City with Homer and start over fresh. It isn't until Frey's at her lowest point where everything changes and she's bound to a mysterious talking cuff that only she can hear, and it transports her to the land of Athia, a place broken and taken over by the break, which transforms any humans or animals into vicious, almost infected-like creatures, anyone and anything except for Frey. Being an outsider works for and against Frey, but thanks to Cuff, she's able to have powers and understand the land of Athia. Their relationship can be pretty humorous through in-game dialogue, but they also have their differences. Being an outsider also gives Frey an edge and gives the people of Sepal hope when Frey takes a stand against the Tantas, rulers of Athia who have been corrupted, but this also challenges Frey's morals on life and death, which is rather refreshing to see in a video game, as Frey's goal is to simply get back home to New York City. However, it does result in some unique boss battles, and the Tantas themselves are vastly different in their personalities and are quite memorable. I found myself being able to relate in Frey in some areas. I can understand feeling out of place and not fitting in, letting a troubling past almost get the better of me. Sometimes Frey does come across as stereotypical, but it isn't bad enough to where she becomes an unlikable character. By the end of the game, I applauded Frey's growth as a character. She learns from her flaws. Sometimes her dialogue can be a little too much, but there's something about her dropping F-bombs all over the place that I absolutely loved. Though, like the dialogue, some story choices are questionable, mainly a lot in the beginning. The writing at the start of the game does come across as weak. Like any game, of course we start with the backstory and the build-up, but it takes a while for the game to really open up, almost to the point of dragging on, and the in-game tutorials really don't help to speed up this process. The story structure reminds me of Death Stranding. Starts off interesting, but takes a while for it to really get started. In Death Stranding, this was after the super long episode 3. In Forspoken, it's similar with halfway through chapter 3 being where it starts to get more exciting, so I would say to hang in there for a bit because it will get better. But what's nice about Forspoken's story is that it doesn't overstay its welcome. It doesn't feel super short, but also doesn't go on to the point of becoming boring. It's a rather nice, satisfying fit in the middle. Where the game truly shines the most is when the open world becomes your playground. Once Chapter 3 finishes, Chapter 4 is truly where the game becomes what it's meant to be. Like any open world, you'll be traveling from point A to point B for the story, but it truly is a journey to get there, and thanks to Frey's ability to dash quickly, the terrain travel becomes enjoyable with the speed and fluidity of the parkour. The world of Forspoken is gigantic. It's one where you want to explore everything. There are 4 different regions, each with their own obstacles and terrain style. Just when I thought I explored a certain area, turns out there's a lot more to it. And that's what I love about Forspoken. It's a game about exploration and discovery. Even though the world is so big and typically I don't like open worlds as much, fast travel and Frey's ability to quickly dash make traversing much more enjoyable. By the time I was done with the game's main story, I had about a quarter or less of the map explored, and that was just whatever I explored along the way to my main destination. Throughout the world, there are various points of interest Frey can check out. Some of these will grant her new powers or unlock new cloaks and nail patterns that can be upgraded to increase Frey's abilities. Underground labyrinths offer one form of a challenge as Frey battles and explores room by room until she faces the big boss, each different and unique in its attack. Sepal offers various side quests from the civilians, like taking pictures in the regions for their orphan children to see what's outside of the walls with her cell phone. And that's only some of what Athia offers. There is still so much more to fight and uncover. Athia comes across as abandoned, but its remnants hold a history, one for Frey to uncover. Forspoken is only as good as one of its main selling points, Frey's magical abilities, and it is incredible how many different abilities she has without feeling overwhelmed. As the game progresses, Frey unlocks new skill trees full of different powers, like one dealing with water and fire, and it's really easy to swap between these main powers on the fly, perfect for experimentation. Completing goals for each ability increases its strength, so it's always important to be paying attention to what these goals are if you want Frey to be at her best. The mix of her powers with her parkour abilities in battle truly made me feel like a badass. Like any game out there are flaws, and it wouldn't be fair to not talk more about them. Probably the biggest annoyance I had was when Frey and Cuff get into more important conversations. It usually happens after a cutscene where Frey can't move while they talk, and you can only move just the camera. It could be because you can select questions to ask Cuff, but taking away the ability to move while these conversations happen really takes the immersion out of the experience. One of Frey's unlockable abilities is to zip to anchor points, and time will slow down so you can pinpoint where you want to zip to. These anchor points usually stand out and glow, and are relatively easy and even fun to use. Frey can also zip to other surfaces, but she won't get as much momentum as the anchor points, and it never really feels as satisfying and wasn't something that needed to be as used. But my highest critique is how the game tries to teach you how to do this. Once grappling is unlocked at the start of Chapter 6, the game tells you how to use it, but it's never clear on how or where to do this at. I had to look it up online, and there are many videos on YouTube on how to do this, and it looks like others have the same concern and question as well. There's also a chapter late in the game where Frey has to learn about Athia's downfall, plot points that are crucial to the story. There is some action in this, but not enough, and part of me thinks that this may have been better as multiple connected cutscenes, because it's like the start of the game where it's a bit more limiting in what you can do. But none of these flaws were enough to stop me from playing the game or diminishing my enjoyment from it. And while I won't spoil what happens at the end of the game has enough of a resolution to stand on its own without any cliffhangers, just in case a sequel never happens. But there are a few lingering questions and what-ifs that a sequel could easily pick up on. Forspoken is a game I hope has a sequel. It has its flaws, I mean, what game doesn't? But Forspoken has some excellent world building and intrigue that I just would love to further explore. This only feels like the start of something bigger and the start of Frey's journey. Plus, a sequel is an excellent way to fix Forspoken's flaws and build upon what makes the game so great. If I had to score Forspoken, I would give Forspoken an 8 out of 10. Yes, there are flaws to be found, but Forspoken really isn't a bad game. And whatever flaws it does have, they were minor enough to overlook. What Forspoken does set out to do, the magical abilities, the parkour, and the giant explorable open world, it does all this pretty well in a satisfying way. Depending on who you are, Forspoken may be best at a lower price if found on sale or even used. I personally had absolutely no regrets spending $95 on the digital deluxe edition. I really enjoyed my time with Forspoken, and for that it was well worth my money. And hopefully you'll decide to check out Forspoken sometime in the future. But let me know your thoughts on Forspoken in the comments below. Are you planning on playing Forspoken? If you have played Forspoken, did you enjoy the game, or is it just not for you? Please be sure to like and subscribe for future content. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.